all the things I've ever done in my life, being run out of my hometown by an angry mob was not one of them. It never happened. We don't talk about it. My name is Rhys von Kirschner. I'm a tiefling bard, professional nightmare, and this is D&D Storytime. Now, a lot of people ask me, Rhys, how did you end up like this? And if by like this you mean incredibly gorgeous and ridiculously talented, I would have to leave it up to good genes. However, what they usually mean is a tambourine jockey with a drinking problem who begs for money on the side of the road. I play really good music though. So, how did I end up like this? It probably started with my maladjusted childhood and my inability to leave my own house before the age 14. Let me explain. My parents, Maria and Alfheim, are human, and Alfheim just happens to be one of the richest men in the town of Lyra, where I grew up. So how did I end up like this? As it turns out, tieflings are not always born to other tieflings. They can be born to humans as long as there was some kind of let's call it hellish rendezvous somewhere along the family line. My father's line was not one of them. My mother, Maria, grew up in a naturally magical family. Now, the reason that they were magical is that someone in the line a long time ago decided to sell all the firstborn sons to the devil in exchange for magical powers. You can probably guess where this is going. So these kids would pop out as tieflings, but the girls didn't. They would just grow up as normal, magically inclined teenagers. Now, Maria, growing up in a family of skeevy witches, was not 100% sure of where all this magic was coming from, because they were killing all of the tieflings. So Mom gets sick of her Shakespearean weird sister's family and decides to run off to make it on her own. She winds up in the quaint little fishing village of Lyra, and she meets my father. And she is instantly smitten by his charming looks and wonderful personality, and definitely not his heaping wads of fat cash. By some form of wretched divine intervention, they fall in love and get married. And all is well for about 9 months. The whole town is already suspicious of how this little peasant girl who seemed to pop out of nowhere could hit it off so well with the richest bachelor in this side of the Forgotten Realms. They're already accusing her of witchcraft because Lyra is a town full of muggles where having magical superpowers is really f***ing rare, and everyone just hangs out on their farms eating fish and loaves. So let's flash forward here. All is well in the von Kirschner household, and then I'm born, and I pop out with a tail and nubby little devil horns, and a streak of red skin running all the way down my back that looks like the devil himself tried to claw me out of the womb, because he probably did. I may be gorgeous, but my literal devilish good looks weren't exactly what Alfheim had in mind when he was picturing his distinguished heir. So he wants to do whatever possible to keep me away from the public. He hires private tutors who are sworn to secrecy, and I spend the next 14 years of my life behind posh mahogany bars. It royally sucked. My parents were totally estranged because Alfheim was still under the impression that my mother must have cheated on him with the literal devil, no matter how many times she said that I was just the product of the family curse. Alfheim, however, was pretentious enough to not totally disown us out of fear of losing his reputation. Yet. He wouldn't disown us yet. In the meantime, I spend my days learning aristocratic nonsense and eating the moss in our private hedge maze. My tutor was able to kick my moss-eating habit by the time I was 6. This is where I picked up all of my music-making abilities, because there's not much else to do in a giant house but sit and be pretentious all day, and what could be more pretentious than learning how to play 18 different instruments? It was like Alfheim wanted to use me to flex on all his aristocratic peers without actually taking me out of the house to flex on all of his aristocratic peers. Which, all in all, I guess I'm thankful for, because prior to my birth, I was on the table for an arranged marriage. They told them I was stillborn. So in the meantime, I am Rapunzeled up in this house with my private tutor and my 18 other instruments, wondering when will my life begin? One day, I got so sick of having my private lessons and watching all the other kids have friends and walk to school that I decided to sneak out. Now, after an initial freakout in which everyone realized the fire-breathing monster in the castle had escaped, I actually adjusted pretty well. If pretty well means adopting self-destructive tendencies to drown out the judgmental whispers of my peers. So the cat's out of the bag, and since Alfheim can no longer hide me to save his reputation, my parents decide to let me continue going to school. And I grew up as a pretty normal teenager. I dated, I slept around, I went to prom, and my terrible coping mechanisms only served to fuel further judgment from this shithole town. I quickly became a self-fulfilling prophecy, and the family disgrace, much to the displeasure of my father, who is at this point very desperate to find himself a new heir, despite the fact that he wouldn't sacrifice his honor to divorce my mother. So they're in a loveless, sexless marriage, and their demon child, who is supposed to be a model citizen, has already made a handful of terrible life decisions. I had like 2 good friends, and they were great. Everyone else was afraid of me. unless they wanted something from me, or I offered something to them, and they were feeling just dangerous enough to take me up. In short, I made a lot of really questionable choices by the time I left my house and the time I graduated high school, and it all happened very, very quickly, probably because I never had any friends. So high school goes alright, and I'm feeling pretty normal. Even though I do drink vodka from a water bottle. Everything was fine, that is, until graduation. There's not a lot of people in this town, so everyone knows everybody else, so graduation is like any other community-wide event. Now, for a while, I had been successfully gaining the favor of the townspeople by telling silly jokes at my own expense and dancing around with a tambourine, an attempt to make myself appear as non-threatening as possible. It was actually working. So I was just transitioning from being a walking trash fire and the family disgrace to a lovable goofball with shaky ethics when disaster strikes. Because if there is a God, he must hate me. It's a typical high school graduation with the silly robes and kids trying to do stupid things as they walk across the stage. I was no exception. I, now being the lovable goofball and not at all threatening scary monster that I once was, decided that I wanted to crack some final jokes as I made my big exit. I really, really should not have done this. I whip out my trusty old tambourine and do a silly little jig across the stage, and then fire comes out of my hands and lights the principal's robes, and we're standing on a wooden stage. Everything is now on fire. The blast hit some people in the front row who are all alive but looking rather toasty, and I look down and see the faces of my two best friends, one of whom is unconscious. I thought I killed him. Naturally, the townspeople think this is either a deliberate attack on the peace or a testament to my uncontrollable beastly nature, because I'm essentially Bat Boy. So me and my mother know that we have to start booking it out of this town. Immediately. We managed to scoot away from the chaos of the graduation scene long enough to pick up our things when an angry mob shows up at our door. This would not be the last time I had to deal with an angry mob. They must use the flames from the fire to light those torches and kept their pitchforks handy, you know, just in case, because the school was still on fire. They want to eat me and my mother alive. Well, actually, they want to burn her at the stake because she's a witch, and I don't even want to think about what they wanted to do to me. And now they're at our front door threatening to burn the whole place down because arson begets arson, am I right, everybody? Alfame has to think fast to save his image, and the whole estate, and he certainly doesn't want to be involved in this anymore. So publicly, in front of the whole town, he disowns me and my mother. Now, we never got that in writing, but we were kind of pressed for time. Now, this is kind of nice, and it's the only favor that Alfame has ever done for me, but he managed to fend them off long enough to negotiate with the mayor and the townspeople to give us a head start out of town. We have until the morning before the search party arrives. So, me and my mother book it for our frickin' lives and have to start all over again from nothing. This also eventually ended with me in jail, but we don't talk about that. It never happened. This whole event, it's just been a story. None of it was real. I didn't get run out of my house by an angry mob, no! I didn't get disowned by my own tall and brooding father to save his public reputation. Psh, didn't happen. Lyra? That's a fake town, fake name, never heard of it. Money? What's that? Family? Just me and my mom, the way it's always been. So that's how I started my life as a street urchin. I decided that the cozy, aristocratic lifestyle that I was leading just wasn't enough for me, and I wanted to see if I could make it out on my own, apart from my family's vast fortune. I decided this for myself, and that is why I can't rely on daddy's money. So I've been wandering for a long, long time, trying to make a dime to send back to my mother, and I can't stay in one place for too long out of fear that it'll get stale. And all in all, it's kind of unsettling, because I know that the family devil is out there, looking for me, coming to collect me because I'm the firstborn son, right? Well, not right. Lucky for me, I am no man. Well, yes and no. It's a complicated question. Gender is vague. So, since I'm not really a man, only kind of a man, can he really take me? I don't know. He hasn't yet, and I'm afraid that I'll probably be around long enough to find out. But in the meantime, I drink to forget.